Hi, I'm Mina Malik Hussain and you're watching The Coffee Table. And today, I'm always excited to be talking to people on this show. But today I'm particularly excited because we are going to be talking to two luminaries in the firmament of broadcast journalism in Pakistan. And interestingly, and you'll see, not just technically in Pakistan, but also out of it. But I am today the novice baby on set because I am in conversation with two wonderful Pakistani women journalists who are out there on TV, smashing the glass ceiling, breaking barriers, asking the important questions, and really blazing a trail for every woman watching this and every young person watching this who'd like to sort of, get on screen and make a difference and shake things up. I'm delighted to be talking and to have Sara Zaman with me on set today. She's an award-winning filmmaker, TV host, and producer who has been an anchor and senior editor at Voice of America's Urdu service since 2007. She hosts a show called View 360 for Voice of America, which is also broadcast here on Aaj TV. From 2009 to 2012, she hosted Khabron Se Aage. In 2008, because she's not just a journalist, but she is also a filmmaker and documentary maker. In 2008, she won a student Emmy for the best college docufilm for her film called Bismillah. And joining me via Zoom today is Maria Maiman, who is the host of Sawal Ye Hai on ARY News. She was a CNN fellow in 2011 and is a software engineer turned journalist, and a very good one at that. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Mina.
I'm bursting with excitement here.
I am too.
Teach me everything, show me your ways.
Look at that, it's the curly girly show, as we were talking about it before the show.
It really is. Maybe we should have got Maria to curl her hair also.
Next time.
There is always a next time, indeed. So Sara, I like to sort of, like I say, begin from the beginning. So tell me about your sort of particular journey as a journalist. Did you always think you were going to be a journalist?
No, I did not. And in fact, when you said, let's go back to the very beginning, my beginnings, like most young people, my beginning was rather confusing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. There were lots of things that I wanted to do. I wanted to be 4 different careers during, a 24-hour span of the day. But by the time I was in college, I was very focused on economics. And I really thought that I would have a career in business.
Right.
And I was actually looking at business degrees to apply for when I was planning to go and study overseas. But somewhere in there, I realized that something that I really enjoy doing is watching TV. And I thought, okay, what can I do with this? And at the same time, I had actually taken journalism as a minor subject in college. And just listening to my teacher talk, just visiting PTV, visiting a couple of newspaper offices, that made me feel as if, this is something that I really enjoy. There is serious work being done, which also I could marry my love for TV with. And that's what kind of got me into journalism. And then I applied for a degree in that and got admission overseas. And then I went and I got my bachelor's in TV production. Not in journalism, but in TV and radio and film production, just because that was something that I needed my skill set in. And then at graduate level, I went for documentary filmmaking, where I learned both journalism and, presenting it. So that's how I basically, finally, I would say, found my path. And here I am today.
Yes, and here you are. But I'm curious, because it must have been a big leap to A, go overseas. And then B, go overseas to study a subject that you'd never done before. Because I think most of us don't have, some of us might do things like write a letter to the editor and get some articles published. And that's still a sort of, it feels accessible. But being on TV is something that you don't just kind of casually go and do.
And in fact, it's funny, since you mentioned the letter to the editor, I think my older sister, she was in 10th grade, and this is, a good 25, 30 years ago, and she wrote a letter to the editor, and it got published, and we clipped it out, and we saved it for years. So yes, that was, it was a huge deal.
It was. Even I did one.
Anywhere.
I think I was 10, and I don't know what came over me. I was like, I must write a letter.
I must be heard. I must get my voice heard. So again, going back to what you said, that leap of going overseas, I was very blessed. I'm very fortunate that I have a history in my family of people either going to study overseas or being in a career, being in a job that gave them the opportunity to go overseas. My father got his PhD overseas. My mother was an air hostess with PIA, so she traveled all over the world. I had cousins before me who had gone overseas to study. So we kind of had that, you know, in our family. But doing it yourself, that still is a big leap, because for your own parents to trust in you, for them to give you the opportunity that, okay, go out, research what you want and do what you want. That the more freedom they give you, the more responsibility they're actually putting on you. And that's what makes you feel like, okay, you know, I don't want to mess this opportunity up. I don't want to miss this opportunity. So in that sense, I'm very, very blessed that I had people who supported me, who encouraged me. But at the end of the day, I had to do it myself. I had to research the universities myself. I had to travel by myself. And I have to tell you this. The very first time that I sat on a plane was when I was going to the US. I had not even flown domestically. I didn't know how to put my seatbelt on. This nice lady sitting next to me said, "Is this your first time?" And I said, "Yes." She's like, "Okay, this is how you do it."
God, so like you're leaving home, but you're also sort of doing so many new things. And honestly, a lot of us, most of us, lead very sheltered lives. You know, we go to, we go to our all-girls colleges and we live with our parents, and we don't have that kind of lifestyle where we're just like zipping around everywhere.
Yeah, so that was a huge transition as well, going overseas and then suddenly doing everything on your own. For the first time, I actually worked, and my first paycheck was $50 at the university food court frying chicken. I had never fried chicken in my house in Pakistan. I was too much of a princess. And then here you are, you know, scrubbing your toilets and frying chicken and, you know, doing all kinds of things on campus and absorbing all of those experiences. Because I strongly believe where I am today, I'm a product of all those experiences. If I hadn't traveled on my own, worked on my own, I would not have had the confidence and the experience to talk to someone and hear their story and be able to understand the emotional journey that they have been through and then present it for my viewers. So every experience matters.
Yeah, and I want to come back to confidence in like just a minute. Hi, Maria, can you hear me?
Hi.
How are you?
I can, and I am so envious of both of you. You're there. I wish I could have joined there for a mini reunion, and I clearly missed the curly girl memo. I would have been on board. I love curls. I would spend an hour doing my hair just for you girls had I known that. So yeah.
I know. We should have really let you know.
I know.
Go easy.
Because you know, we just take ours for granted. We're like, I just woke up like this.
Absolutely.
It takes me 1 hour. So yeah, you know, that's, you have to give me heads up for that.
Yeah, that's true. And the reverse for us, you know, if somebody tells you to straighten your hair, then you're like,
it's the other way around for you guys.
It's true. I think Sarah and I have successfully resisted being boxed into straight hair against our wills. So, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's great. You are good role models for girls who have curly hair. My nieces have curly hair. And now when they see girls who are making their mark, who have hair like them, it makes them feel good about themselves. So I actually saw one of my niece has this wavy hair, and she said, "Oh, Moana has same hair. It's a cartoon character." And while I was growing up, I never had that sort of, you know, a person to look up to who looked like me, who I could relate to. So things are changing. Hats off to you girls.
Yeah, love it. It's like even a hair as a revolution. But it's true, isn't it? And I feel like women, and this why today's show is also so sort of interesting to me and dear to my heart, is that we're talking about women being visible and intelligent women with the voice who have things to say and have things to say in front of everybody, and people listen. And I think that that's just magnificent. And you guys are, you know, touch wood, doing it so well. But we're talking about journeys, Maria, and I know that yours is an unorthodox one, because you started out with your software engineering, which is like really technical and more sort of, you know, science-based and geeky-based. And then after your degree, you decided to go into HR, and then here you are now. So what was happening through all of this? All these sort of different directions that you were taking?
This is a classic case of a millennial who doesn't know what to do in her life when she was growing up. And this is, and my story is not alone, Meena.
Yes.
In our generation, there was a lack of mentoring. Even our parents were figuring out things. The world was opening up. New horizons were coming up. They were kind of in the safe zone, who wanted their child to venture out into different fields, but yet they wanted to stick to the comfortable, you know, domain of medicine or engineering, you know. So we belong to that generation generation. My parents wanted me to become a doctor. I couldn't, and they were disappointed. And sometimes still it came up after whenever they want to throw their weight around. They say, "Tum nahi bani doctor, but Dad, listen, I come on TV." And he would say that, "But you could have come on TV had you been a doctor too. Look at some people who are doctors." And so this sort of bantering back and forth, it still happens sometimes. But I did not know what to do with my life, frankly. And I am completely a destiny's child, pushed into directions that I didn't even know I had the potential for, frankly. And now when young girls, they come up to me and they think, I'm so sorted, I'm so confident, I must have known exactly from the start what I wanted to be. They ask me, when did you get to know that you want to be a TV anchor? So I just tell them, sweetheart, I didn't even know till the age of 23. I joined the field at the age of 24, and then when things started turning around for me. So it's all right if you're still confused. Things are much better now. Kids are so much more aware of what they like, what they don't like, and even parents are more open to this idea that it's all right if you don't become a doctor or an engineer. So I come from that generation. I was listening to Sarah's journey. It's pretty thorough and illustrious. She went through the proper channel, got the formal education. I did not. I learned everything on the job. Every damn thing. I didn't even know how to hold a mic. And my cameraman taught me. And these people were my amazing teachers. They took me under their wings, and I was a baby, and they would tell me how to talk to someone, how to stand, which frame would look better, which side is better, and how we can do this again. So my cameramans, my producers, my editors, my assignment desk heads, and my bosses, they taught me on the job. And I think a formal education would have helped for sure. The distance that I had to, the leap that I had to take, and the hard work that I had to put in on job, that could have been saved because I had been formally trained. It would have helped me in some way, but again, no regrets. Like Sarah said, we are a product of our decisions, our mistakes, our regrets, our challenges. So whoever I am today, whatever journey it was, as long as you end up being okay with where you are, I think it's all worth it.
That is so insightful, and I want to unpack that a little bit more. But first, a quick break. Stay with us. Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. We're talking to journalist rock stars Sara Zaman and Maria Maimun today about women in broadcast journalism. So pumped, really. So Sarah, I'm sort of still thinking about this idea of, we have Maria who learned as she went. And there is an argument for that, about how when you want to get into any kind of journalism, you don't necessarily have to read it as a subject properly or get a degree, but you do learn on the job. And that's how a lot of people have become adept at what they were doing. But you went through a formal channel. And of course, like you said, you didn't study journalism directly in that way for your undergrad, but you were looking at production. But that's still very much sort of, two sides of the same coin. So what are the skills that you feel like people can benefit from in a formal degree?
So actually, I did take classes in journalism, just that my final degree was not a bachelor's in journalism. But I took several classes in journalism, and then documentary filmmaking is just an extended form of journalism. I cannot overemphasize the value of getting formal training in this. The fact is that while you can learn a lot at your job, and I have learned a lot at Voice of America, but if you have that foundation where you learn how to write a balanced news story, how to shoot, how to edit, whether it's a script or a video, how to interview, all of those things give you the foundation, which then gives you the confidence to actually perform in the field. Once you are hired by someone, you're in a place where your employer can rely on you a bit more, and you're in a place where you are just a bit more confident. So I would say in terms of reliance and confidence, it's very important, but learning the fundamentals. And I would say that it's not entirely right to disregard that when it comes to journalists, because sure, you wouldn't think somebody can be a doctor without studying medicine. The thing is, journalists are kind of your window to the world.
Yes.
They need to be very conscious of what they're doing, and that consciousness comes from preparation, and that preparation comes from good training, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a TV station job, whether it's an internship. So I cannot overemphasize the value. Not to say that those who didn't have that training cannot learn it. No, absolutely they can. There are people who are doing a much better job than me. I look up to Maria.
Yes.
The way she conducts herself in her show, the way you're doing your show, I look up to all of you. But I would say that I don't regret for a single moment spending the time and spending the money in getting that education.
Yeah, so it is an important and valuable set of skills that if you can have access to, then it is really helpful to have it. And I imagine
because very early on, it instills in your mind the importance of certain things.
Yes.
Which,
such as what?
Such as balance, first of all. What is a balance story? Such as getting all the voices of all the stakeholders of a story. Like those are things. When people watch TV, a lot of times people feel, oh, this journalist is biased, or this anchor is biased, or this reporter is biased. The fact is, the earlier you get that training of including voices and excluding your own voice, the better it is. It makes you a stronger journalist. It makes you a more neutral journalist. Not to say that as humans we don't have our biases.
Yes.
But you learn to check your biases at every step of the way.
Yeah. No, and that is crucial, I think, towards responsible reporting. And that's also something I want to kind of come back to, because it's also, I feel like, that's probably particularly important in the nature of work that you do. Because with Voice of America, you're based in Washington, but you are reporting about Pakistan.
Yes.
Because you're working for the
very
Urdu
challenging
service.
situation.
And then we're going to sort of, check biases is something we're going to cycle back to. So, Maria, like we were talking about this before also, about how people who don't go to journalism school, and we don't have those opportunities here, but do you feel like this is a factor in the reasons why a lot of reporting or television reporting in Pakistan has taken a particular kind of turn? Because I know that a lot of people who do watch TV do have this opinion that a lot of anchors are biased, and a lot of our shows kind of veer away from a kind of cool and calm analysis and often devolve into brawls.
Yeah, it's a very interesting observation, and I would completely agree with Sarah on this, that a formal education would always be a far better, far logical, far more a stronger approach if you want to join this field. I did not have it, and I wish I would have, but that's all right. I made up for it by putting in double hours at work. So, for example, if I did not know certain things, I would put extra hours at work after my shift to learn those things. So that was my initiative, and I was kind enough that people were there to teach me. Some people don't even take the pain of teaching or mentoring someone young.
Yes.
So I was very lucky. I got good mentors, but I had to work extra for that. And had I gone to a proper school, probably that would have saved me a little bit of hard work.
Yeah.
But then it's a very fine mix. I know a lot of good journalists who do not have a formal degree, but they do have an intrinsic sense of how to deal with news. There's sometimes we see students coming up from the media schools or journalism schools, but they do not have that particular, eye for news. They would know everything very well. They would know all the procedures. They would know all these fancy terms, how to operate a camera, how to do all the technicalities. But when the content is presented to them, they do not know how to handle it.
What does that mean, Maria? What does it mean to kind of have a sense of the news?
Yeah, because listen, we all get the same sort of, information from the screen. How to decipher it, how to sort of, put it together and figure out what's happening. Or, this is something, this is what sets a normal journalist to somebody who is really good, or who is at a very exalted analyst position. I would say there are a couple of people who are really gifted in that way. They have information, and then they do their own analysis. But that is the news, the eye for news I'm talking about. If a ticker is running on television and suddenly you would say, wait, why? A few hours ago I saw something else running here, and if you join these two bits of information, what is happening? And then you sort of make your opinion about that. So this is something that you did with, sometimes a formal school does not help.
Quite right.
However, if you are gifted and you have the right education, then inshallah you will be unstoppable. It's a very fine mix. And what you're saying about the reporting thing, I think there's a lot of ground realities involved in the way we are reporting things and the way we are managing media in Pakistan. And I sometimes friends who have had formal education, and they would say we have to unlearn a lot of things we learned at school, because real life is nothing what they taught us at college or university. This wasn't supposed to work that way, and so that's another perspective to that. So a lot of unlearning sometimes.
So Maria,
while you're working,
if one is an aspiring broadcast journalist, how can one develop an eye for the news and that sense of being able to kind of pick things up and be like, oh wait a second, and like asking the right questions? Can you develop that sense?
You can fine-tune it, but you cannot inculcate it from scratch. I'll be very honest with you. For example,
Sarah's also nodding over here. She's like,
So if you enjoy news, if you enjoy current affairs, if you enjoy staying informed, if you are very much interested in politics, then you will have a natural affinity for it. You will not have to learn it. You can fine tune it, like we all did. We all grew. We learned from, but there has to be certain basic, inclination for things you love. Otherwise, you can work here, but then you won't rise up above a certain level, because other people who might be younger than you, who probably won't even have a formal education, but if they do have that, special sense about the system, so they will just stride past you. And this has happened with me. I did a lot of senior people, they felt that a girl with no formal education, how come she is, getting ahead of us while we've been grinding for 2 decades? But I'm sorry, I'm not. One thing I've learned: stop being apologetic for good things coming your way.
Very good and very important.
And especially for women, stop apologizing for good things coming your way, man, if you're working hard. So it does happen. You just one fine day you wake up, you say, I want to learn this business. It doesn't happen like that. So you need to have that, sort of knack for this. It's like a knack.
It's like no gut story, It's like it's not just, I feel like, and we were talking about this sort of, offset before, is that what we see on the news is a very packaged presentation. So it's just the tip of a very large iceberg underneath it, where a lot of research, a lot of preparation, a lot of reading, and a lot of time has gone into sort of presenting this. And maybe people feel like if you're on TV, then it's this glamorous job and you just swan in, do it and leave. But that's
I think TV has one of the worst ratio of hard work to reward. So, you go out, even if you're shooting just a TV package, you go out, you have to line up people, you have to convince them, first of all. You have to find them, then convince them, then you go out and interview them, you shoot all the relevant material, bring it back, synthesize it, turn it into a script, find the necessary sound bites, edit it, and then present it. And this I'm just telling you about, a standard news package. A 2-minute news package is going to take several hours.
Whoa.
So, several hours, and the end result is 2 minutes, but those 2 minutes are, they pack a punch. And those are the 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes that have gotten me where I am and that have gotten Maria where she is. So you cannot discount the value of hard work. And I have to, take a moment and say that I completely agree with Maria in the sense that while training gives you the skill set that you need, you have to have that instinct in yourself. And it's like being, like being a singer. You can learn everything about sur and tal, but if you're a besura, nobody's going to be able to, make you very melodious. That talent has to be inborn. That has to be in you. You can polish it for sure, but a little spark has to be somewhere in there for somebody else to see and then open that door for you and give you that opportunity.
Absolutely. So which means that if you do feel like you have the spark, it's really worth nurturing and encouraging yourself also to kind of explore that. And if you don't have the spark, then it's sensible to kind of consider that it will get you to a certain place, but maybe beyond that.
And I would say also don't be super focused on just one job. A lot of people, because they see TV anchors, the first thing that somebody wants to do is be an anchor. But you know, I would say yes, have that goal, have that dream. I eventually developed that dream, and I am very fortunate that I've been able to fulfill it. But that was not my dream on day one.
Yes.
You know, when
What was your dream?
When just to do TV, just to be part of TV news or documentary filmmaking in some way, shape, or form. So when I was in getting my bachelor's, I was working at a TV station which was affiliated with the university. I was working on the nightly newscast, and that's where I got real life experience of journalism. But you know, I did camera there, I did video editing, I did news writing, producing, I ran tapes, I ran weather graphics. I learned every single position. It gives you, first of all, it gives you respect for your colleagues, for all of those positions. You don't come on the set feeling very entitled that, oh, you know, this cameraman better make me look good.
Yeah.
Because you know what it takes to be a camera person.
Yes.
So it gives you a lot of respect. And then on top of that, that is the moment that gives you so much exposure that then you can decide, you know what, I wanted to be an anchor, but I love being behind the camera. I just love being able to capture the scene and present it to the public. So you know what, I don't want to be an anchor. I think I want to be a camera person, or I think I want to be a producer. So don't set your, don't be so myopic in your approach that I want to be an anchor, and if I can't be an anchor, then you know what, I'm a failure. Not at all.
Not at all.
Give yourself the space to learn. You will find something that you're passionate about, and you will be able to nurture your talent to the point that you can be called an expert.
Yeah. And then I feel like when you work your way up, like you did and Mario also did, and we were talking about confidence earlier, and I feel like do you think that as a woman, having that confidence and having that technical know-how has helped you in your career, because you couldn't be pushed around by other people telling you that you didn't know what you were talking about?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes you have to remind the other person that, you know what, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the fact that you are able to do that is very empowering.
Yeah.
And that again comes from training. But again, going back to Maria's experience, you can get that training at work also.
Yeah, but you have to work at it.
But you have to work at it.
And
you
like
cannot have that entitled approach that now that I'm an anchor or now that I'm on TV, I don't care what other positions, people on other positions have to do to accommodate me. You have to accommodate them, you have to learn from them.
It's a team effort.
It's a team effort. There is no, you know, the anchor is not alone. There's a whole team that gets you there.
Absolutely. We're going to take a very quick break at this crucial juncture. We will see you in just 1 second. Stay with us. Welcome back to the coffee table and this fascinating, valuable conversation that we're having with journalists Sara Zaman and Maria Maiman about journalism and being a woman in journalism. So Maria, do you feel that over time you've had to grapple with a lot of things because you were a female journalist that maybe your male counterparts didn't? Like, for example, you know, being assigned certain stories because they were like, you know, ladies stories.
Yeah. Okay, so I would say that it's fairly tilted in a very weird way. I'll explain how. Because when you start as a cub reporter, if it's a male or a female, the seniors or the older people would never want you to, you know, sort of get ahead. They feel threatened, be it a male or a female. So there it's pretty balanced at that point. And all the light stories would be assigned to you. But then again, if you're doing lighter stories, the senior male would not feel threatened by you. But if a man is doing lighter stories, his colleagues would say, oh, you're a man and you're doing these lighter stories, and the seniors would probably feel more threatened by them. You know what I'm saying? It's a pretty weird observation that I've made. Yeah. But once you start getting ahead or start, you know, moving up the ladder, there is something again, then there are some few occasions where you get the advantage of your gender and where you're at, you know, where there's a disadvantage. For example, when I was doing my reporting, and since I was a female, so they were looking for a female news anchor specifically. So there my gender helped. Had I been a man, I would not have gotten that break at that time. So my gender being a female at that time helped me. And female news anchors are more valued at certain organizations. And they are even paid better. At that time, they were, you know, some females are paid better than men news anchors in some organizations. It's the truth. And In some, but I'm talking about the A-list ones. Of course,
Right.
the others, they would be struggling and they would have poorer managements. But if you talk about 2-3 big channels,
Yeah.
so it's pretty much at par in there. However, when you graduate to a program anchor, which I did eventually, the pay scale depends upon the impact you have. So for in
Right.
a network, you would have highly paid women, but low paid men, just because women in that network have more impact.
Yeah.
In few networks, you would see women are paid less than men, and this big, big impactful bullish anchors, they would get paid more because they have more impact. So the pay grade has got nothing to do with your gender. It has to do with how much what value you bring to the table.
So it's a question
for that network.
Okay, so it's a question of capability as opposed to gender, but that's not the norm, is it?
Overall, I think I would say it's pretty much it's how it is in this industry right now as I speak. I know a few female anchors who have been more established, who've been hanging in there far longer than I am, and in their networks they are paid more than the men. In there, so it's a very it's a very weird and interesting observation. Then again, now let's look at the flip side. For example, if my male colleagues, they want to network, they want to have that 2 a.m. sutta, get together with their politician friends or their contacts or their sources. So that's fairly easy for them. I cannot do that. I could do that, but that would have a very, very detrimental effect on my work ethic and my character, as per say how the society perceives me. So for me,
really glad that
is a no-no.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because these are things that you need in order to make that career progress, to reach that point where you get paid and you get those benefits. But in order to get there, do we have access to those spaces? Do we have access to those, 2 a.m. late dinner parties, or, just staying back late at work where you can network and you can go out or just hang out more? And we don't, and it's just true. And it's true. Just harder.
It's harder, and I think, women are newer and fewer in media still. I mean, the Pakistani media market for the last 15, 17 years has been rather robust. It has been growing, but still, the number of women who are reporters, the number of women who are not just analysts but anchors, they're fewer. Men, for all these years, who were whether they were in print and then they switched to TV, they had a head start. They had much more time than us. So they had developed contacts. They are still relying on those contacts. So it makes it harder for women to develop the same kind of contacts with the same kind of people. So that also makes it harder for women to have the kind of very high profile guests on their show and to have the kind of conversation that certain other shows have. So I agree with that women, even if, let's say, nobody's stopping us from coming to that party, there are certain cultural norms, certain social norms, certain familial responsibilities that women end up carrying that just prevent them from going to, an 11 p.m. dinner party or, a 1 a.m. Get together, hang out. Exactly. So where there are still certain barriers, not necessarily put by any person or institution,
but they exist. And I feel like it's disingenuous for other people to say that, well, no one's stopping you. Like, but yes, one is
the system is designed in such a way that it makes it just a little harder for women to break through.
Absolutely. And this also, to my mind, also raises, I'm thinking about these things, is also like how we perceive journalism, like our definition of what constitutes journalism. And I think for most people, it's always just politics. And I feel like when, like your show or my show, and we talk about things that are political in nature, but they're not necessarily directly political. Like this conversation is political, but not in the traditional sense. But then I feel like sometimes it gets bracketed as a woman's show. Or like conversations women have.
Yeah, exactly. Women-centric. I mean, what is women-centric? Women, women are part of the society. They need the same amount of money to, feed their children. They have to go and pay the same amount of money for dal and for atta and for chawal. So, a man is not doing, or a woman doesn't have needs that are so significantly different from a man's needs when it comes to living in a society that you would need a separate channel or separate kinds of content necessarily for them. So I agree with you. There's a huge spectrum between a light-hearted morning show, which has its own space, of course, among the audience, and the hard-hitting political talk shows. Because life is happening somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
There are careers, there is, education to be had, there's a career to be made, there are bills to be paid.
Yeah.
And there are so many
and there's
things
so many
that have to be brought.
There's so many conversations that are not exclusive to women.
Yeah.
And for example, like on your show, and because again you are based in America, and I'm sure that also is part of how you approach your job. And if, for example, conversations about race, those are not women's issues. Those are social issues that apply to everybody.
That apply as much to women as they to men. So we use a term in Washington and in the US actually, outside the Beltway. So Beltway is this highway that goes around Washington, D.C. And there is life and there's a world outside of the Beltway. And that is what needs to be brought to the forefront. And that's what, that's what journalists and media houses are constantly struggling to bring out, and they're constantly getting criticized that they don't do enough of that. And I would say exactly in the same way, there's a life outside of Islamabad, there's a life outside of the Parliament House. And that's where real people are living with their real issues. And those are the stories that in View 360, me and my team, we try to bring to the forefront. That, if you don't have clean drinking water, let's talk about that. And it's not just a politician's responsibility or negligence that you don't have it. Let's talk about the systems. What's in place to get you clean drinking water? Where can you get it from? Why don't you have it? So all of those things. So there's a lot that's happening in lives that is outside of the halls of, the congressional building, or outside of the parliament's halls.
So Madhya, do you feel like, because now you have that platform, that you are able, because now, again, I don't want to sort of reduce it to just the fact that you're a woman, but do you feel like you do have a perspective on events that you cover which are different from your colleagues, because your experience of the world is different, and that means you are bringing something valuable to your show, and clearly you are, because people love watching you. They listen to what you say. You have the nose.
Absolutely. And I also think, Meena, that a lot is happening behind the screens when women join the workforce. For example, I have my 1 hour slot 3 times a week. So that makes around, 3 hours per week. But the editorial battles that we fight behind the doors, the things that we discuss with our management in those movers and shakers that we need to change. For example, the way certain cases are reported. I saw this headline on a network, and it said that 6th husband of that woman killed her, murders her. So I just called up the news head. I said, why is it so necessary to mention that person, the killer, was the 6th husband? What are you trying to imply over here? That just because, it kind of sort of muddles her character. It sort of muddles the whole, so
because you're placing the emphasis. You're placing the emphasis on the fact that she married many times, as opposed to she was murdered by her husband.
So things like that, we do fight these private battles. For example, harassment. A lot of times we have strong opinion, probably not on screen, but off screen. We do have these discussions with people in our management. We do have these discussions with our colleagues. Now they come up to us and ask us, what is appropriate, what's inappropriate, and also how the way you report something, the emotional intelligence factor that women bring to the table. I have, I do not sort of put people in boxes or bracket them, but I think emotionally women are far more intelligent as compared to their male counterparts, and that reflects in the reporting as well. So, for example, Model Town rape case, if you look at it, I think the way women spoke on this issue was far more empathetic and far more stronger than the male counterparts. The men were equally disturbed. I know it for a fact, because women and their wives were sort of like, like giving them hell that you need to raise this issue because, we feel so violated.
Strongly about it.
So, because women pushed them. I know it for a fact that women said, you cannot sort of let this story go. We have to deal with it. And we were coming from a position of empathy. We knew that it could have been us, or any one of us, felt unsafe at a certain point of time. So yes, this does act, adds a layer to it. On camera, off camera, and also with the policy decisions, Meena. For example, a woman will be more in managerial positions. That would result in women-friendly policies for that, institution or company. So sometimes, these are some things that we don't even sort of account whenever we talk about the whole concept of women coming into workforce. So probably a lot is also happening behind the scenes as much, as compared to what you see in front of the screen. I had this very heated, debate with someone from my work that should somebody be given some award if he's, there's a harassment accusation against him. And I'm glad they reached out to me and they kind of agreed to my point after that debate. So these small things matter. At that time you would say, okay, convincing one person, what difference does it make? I think if it does make a difference, bit by bit, 1% to 1%.
Absolutely.
So
and I'm really glad that you brought up the fact that when somebody is on the news, you are helping shape opinions about how we understand events and how we process what's going on around us, because it's very easy for any kind of media to put a particular angle on it, and then that's just how people see an event.
Yeah, we're in a way, we're people's eyes to the world. We're people's window to the world. Where we are bringing you stories that you don't physically have access to. If I'm sitting in Washington and showing you homelessness in Washington, it's a relatable story. You don't have access to that, but it's my responsibility, and it's up to me how I present it. And I would say that, even if we were to take a step back from the gender conversation, let's look at the experience aspect of it. Every person, their outlook is a product of their experiences. Why wouldn't you want a variety of experiences sitting at the decision-making table? And those experiences bring a lot of value to the table, even if my cultural background, the language that I speak, the way that I look, the economic class that I belong to, they have all shaped who I am. So when you have this product sitting at the table with somebody who has a completely different perspective on things, the result, the conversation that is going to generate is going to be much richer than if you had the same exact
sort of clones of each other, the same bubble
sitting at the table. Then you're just preaching to the choir. Then you're just all you're all in a bubble. Exactly, it's an echo chamber. You have to get out of that echo chamber.
So, and do you feel like it's been really useful for you because you are in a position where you are associated with this international news service and you bring a very particular kind of experience to the table? And I'm sure when issues come up, like wars, for example, and how are we going to look at what's happening in Syria, for example, and then, here you are, and you come from a particular background where you have a different take on that, and you're able to speak about it as well.
So actually, we joke at VOA, we call it a mini United Nations, because when you walk into the building, you see people of all ethnic backgrounds from all over the world. And so when when you're having a conversation about a story, sure, within the Urdu service, when we're talking, we're all Pakistani, people of Pakistani origin. But anytime there's a story in Syria, or if there is something has happened in Congo, or something has happened in Myanmar, we are fortunate that we have access to journalists from that country, who then have people who are on the ground reporting from there. So I don't have to sit in my bubble in Washington and just assume what's happening in Syria and base my understanding of that from what I'm reading in the media. I have access to people who can actually get authentic, original reporting from the ground, and then I can understand that reality better and present it to my viewers in a much more informed manner. So yes, having people of different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different countries absolutely enriches my own outlook, my own knowledge, which I hope reflects in what I do.
It completely does. Thank you so much, Sara, and thank you so much, Maria, for being on the show with me today. Such a vibrant and important and fantastic conversation, and I hope that it inspires all of you people watching the show, is that it's okay if you don't know, but the world is your oyster, and you can go out and you can experiment and you can find out what you're really good at. And if journalism is one of those things, then good luck into the trenches with you. Don't be afraid of anything. Thank you guys for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Coffee Table. Bye now.